Enjoy.
Thank you for the quick introduction. Welcome back. I know you had a great lunch. I hope that nobody will start to do a quick nap rapidly and will enjoy my slides. So a little story regarding the slides. I was already a speaker last year besides Luxembourg. I gave a workshop, and when I saw the call for paper open this year, I said, yeah, I will submit again. And what I did, as many speakers do, I just submitted my ID, and then I was accepted. And I said, oops, no, I have to write some slides and to find interesting content. I had also all the ideas in my mind as usual, but I had to put everything on paper, on slides. And finally, I had some nice findings, and I hope that you will enjoy it. So again, a quick introduction about myself, but Benoit already did it. So my name, my nick, I'm very active on Twitter. For the one who do not follow me, sometimes I'm tweeting a lot, especially during conference like HackerU and so on. I tweet a lot of stuff. Sometimes interesting, sometimes it's really junk. I'm sorry about this. I'm freelance. Very important for me. I'm part of the SANS Internet Storm Center as a security handler. So it means that I receive a lot of samples, a lot of data from worldwide people who submitted us data. That's why I have access to a lot of logs, a lot of events and stuff like this. If you want to reach me out, some URLs, my company, my blog, SANS, and also Brucon, of course, because I'm co-organizer of the conference. So the idea behind the talk, everybody makes mistake. Who attended HackerU? Before, besides, I presume a lot of people, yeah. Who attended the call for failure? Also a lot of people, yeah. We make failure all the times, of course. So we have to deploy stuff, new stuff. We have always new projects coming on the top of the list. Then we have to cancel other projects. It's changing all the time. And what I'm trying to do is learning my mistakes. So when you do shitty work, you don't have to be afraid to say it. Yeah, it was really a shitty code. I made a mistake. I forgot to do this, to change a password, for example, to change a configuration, to save it. So we have to learn by mistakes. And the goal of this presentation is really to give you some bad stories that I faced. I will not mention any customer, any tool. Some people will maybe recognize some screenshots, but the idea is really to give you real live example of what may happen when you do some log management stuff inside your company. Log management 101, because yeah, we have to do some kind of introduction and quickly. Log management is a way to collect a lot of information from all your devices, application, tools that run on your networks. And from a security perspective, the goal is to be able to search for interesting stuff inside all those events. Can you imagine you have today big infrastructures with multiple operating systems, appliances, and in case of security incident, you have to connect on multiple devices. Okay, when the guy connected on my VPN, then started a RDP session, they did that. It's quite boring. Log management solution, you have everything in a central place and you can just investigate. My job is not to collect logs. For some customers, it's just to have a look at the logs. So if I have one tool and I can from one central place check everything, that's perfect. But of course, you know that your infrastructure are changing all the time. And so if you don't maintain this solution, the log management solution, you will miss interesting stuff. And trust me, a lot of mistakes may happen. Quick question for you. Who has a SIEM in your environment? A lot of people. That's nice. Yeah, sorry. Next question. Who is involved in the SIEM configuration? So I mean not using the SIEM to search, to investigate, but really to configure the SIEM. So configure source of events and stuff like this. Okay. And last question. Just for my statistic point of view, who is using Splunk? QRadar? Oops. ArcSight, for example? ELK? ELK / all the stuff. Yeah, okay. So many people. Interesting. When you start to talk about SIEM, so already at HackerU, we had a lot of tools in which involves team, and I already learn and I see this kind of quotes on slides. Yeah, we have a SIEM and we can inject 15k APS, so events per second. That's a very big one. Yeah, in our SIEM, every day we index 30 gigabytes of data. Woo, it's really nice platform. Yeah, or SOC, we get 250 alerts a day. That's very nice and so on. Well, for me, I don't care about this. It's like, you know that people, so men, they always had a joke between them. Yeah, mine is bigger than yours. It's the same for me. Exactly. I don't care about getting a lot of events in my SIEM, in my log management solution. I need the right events. I don't care about the amounts. If I have really the events interesting to do my investigation, it's a win. So I don't care about the size. We will discuss about this in a few seconds. Yeah, I fully agree. So I also like the story of the manager. So yeah, I face this really. Every morning, a manager visited the SOC. Hey guys, how are you? Everything is fine, no incident. And the SOC say, yeah, nothing, all is green. Do I have to be happy or scary? That's the question. You never know. You never know, but it's real story. I knew the manager and he did it every morning. So we are facing the logs dilemma right now. So also we can work in two different ways, opportunistic or use cases. That's the two approach that you can implement when you start to deploy your log management solution, and we can quickly compare them. We have the opportunistic approach. So for each of them, I have pro and con. If you work with opportunistic approach, it means that you log everything, you collect a lot of stuff. It's ideal for DFR. So you need to investigate something. You don't know what you're looking for, threat hunting, more details, more events, more log you have, more you will find interesting stuff. It's ideal to hunt. If you use the use case approach, then you will in a business-oriented mode. So it means that you will have the control of all the resources, and very important for the management, return on investment, you can reach it. It costs a lot of money to deploy such kind of tools. So if you can prove to your manager that by deploying this kind of solution in X months, X week, you will be able to spot the bad guy or to really solve a security incident that may occur, it's a win. On the other side, the con, of course, if you are in opportunistic approach, you will consume a lot of resources. You will be flooded constantly by events. It's like a needle in the haystack. You don't know what to look for. So really, hunting is fine. You do hunting from time to time, but if you work only on hunting, it's not the best choice. You need constant fine tuning, and you have a false impression of security. Yeah, again, like my previous slide, I ingest a lot of gigabytes of data per day. So in case of incident, I know that the information will be present. Maybe, maybe not. On the other side, the use case approach, of course, you will miss logs. You will not collect everything. You will have sometimes the impression to be blind, because I like logs. So I like to work on the opportunistic approach, because more data I have, I can really search for funny stuff. But you have, on the other side, you have the impression to be blind. Okay, I only have this kind of log. We have an incident. The incident impacts this branch office. Yeah, but we don't have log from this branch office, so we are blind. Case closed. We cannot find anything else. And it's also a slow start. So you will need to take your time to deploy the infrastructure, and you will reach the return on investment, but it will take more time. The best, of course, is to have both. That's normal. So this is some kind of timeline. So basically, how you work, you start with some use cases. Use cases are really important. That's what you would like to spot if it happens. It's based on your business. If you are working on a health environment, banking environment, insurance, IoTs, ICS, whatever, you will have different use cases. The most important is you have to know your business, you have to know your organization to spot the interesting stuff. Then, of course, you need to learn the tool because it's quite complex. Once it's done, you can start to add more use cases. You demonstrate to the management. It's a win. So what does it mean? You get more resources, you log more and more and more, and then you can hunt and react quickly and start really to do some threat hunting and friend stuff. But I like this picture. So Bruce Schneier, classic guy. It's not a tool, it's a process. I think that this quote has been used in many, many presentations, but it's real. That's the point. You need a lot of processes, a lot of procedures. You need to write down everything to maintain all the stuff. Otherwise you will fail. Are you ready to dive? No. No, I have some interesting bad stories. So very important, the most important quote of my slide is no SIEM was harmed in the making of this slide deck. Trust me. Stories has been anonymized, so you will not find any customer name, brand, anything. But I think they are quite funny. The first one, the first failure that you may have is nothing is in place. I'm still facing this from time to time for customers. I had an incident, I had to investigate an incident a few weeks ago. Company called me, Xavier, can you join because we had a security issue? Okay. First question, do you have some logs, some material? Yes, we have our firewall logs. Okay. May I have access? Yeah, sure. Start searching for some logs, but I see only the 3 last weeks. Yeah, that's normal. Yeah, but the incident occurred 4 weeks ago. Case closed. I'm sorry, but case closed. You will receive my invoice, but I can help you. Yeah, of course. I'm going on site. I'm doing some search. Even if it's not successful, I spend some time. So, you will see that on some slide, I will always try to put a light bulb. It's not an excuse to have to say no money, no time, and so on. Today, it's quite easy to have a basic solution. ELK is completely free, the ELK stack. Splunk, you can deploy a Splunk with a small license, 500 megabytes per day. It's free. It's easy. Yes? That, I know, but my goal is not to speak about Splunk. I don't have any cap, and I have to mention some tools, but I will not promote any solution, any commercial solution. Same for Microsoft. Microsoft has so a lot of people are moving stuff to Office 365. Microsoft offers for free today a log management solution close to Office 365. So by default, you can have all your logs integrated into the cloud of Microsoft. It's the cloud. I fully agree. So I will not start a debate about do we put data in the cloud or not. It's not my goal today. But you have solutions. So when people say we don't have any log management solutions today, sorry guys, you have plenty of solutions. It will not cost you a lot of money. The second example, know your tools. If you collect logs, of course, you will have to interact with multiple devices. Firewalls, operating systems, switches, routers, blah, blah, blah. And again, it was another company this time. I had to investigate an incident, and the firewall was not properly configured. So what they did, they just dropped connection, refused connection. Problem is that the company was breached via a RDP connection. Okay, classic today. But RDP was allowed because RDP was public and was facing the internet. Again, I will not complain about this. It's not the goal, but RDP was allowed on the firewall. So they do. Xavier, could you tell us who accesses the RDP? Because the event logs were dropped, everything. So we had no logs on the system. The system was completely destroyed. Check in the firewall. Yeah, but we lock only drop connection. Case closed. Again, I can help you, and it's fixed. Next example, don't trust your sysadmins. It's not, if you are working in a middle-sized environment, in small companies, usually you have the sysadmins they also have a security cap, so they do everything by themselves. But if you switch to a bigger company, usually you have the security team, a network team, system admin team, and so on. And it's not the sysadmin who decide what to lock or not. If you are working in security, it's your job, based on your use case and so on, to know that you need this kind of locks, this one, this one, this one. And sometimes, often with the help of the management, you have to push the sysadmin and say, yeah, I need this kind of logs. The classic examples are DNS logs on a DC. By default, an Active Directory does not log the DNS request, you have to activate them, but you need to run the service in debug mode. And sysadmins, they hate this. So it's a debate. You will have to fight against them. You will have to have meetings and so on. But the information is there. If you need it, it's up to you to get the management support and to have access to different logs. Today is not tomorrow. It's also a classic issue. The logs value may change in time. We deployed our SIEM solution or log management solution 6 months ago, and since we didn't have an incident, so it's working quite fine. Yeah, of course, we had no incident. Then you have an incident, and you realize that, last month there was a big integration of companies, or some people left the company, they forget to do that, they change a firewall, they split the firewall, and they added an extra layer, they added a reverse proxy, whatever you want. It was not integrated. So you have constantly changed the way you handle your logs. Also, depending on your business, you may have some new requirements. If your company is integrated into a bigger one, the big company, your sister company may come to you and say, "Oh, Xavier, by default, but starting from now, you have to provide some compliance reports because the mother company needs this, so you have to provide something." So, of course, this will have a huge impact on your SIEM because you will have to integrate new logs because you don't have everything, and so change all the time. Today is not tomorrow. Log yourself. I made this mistake. So we're speaking about Splunk. So on many solutions, when you buy a license, you have a daily quota that you can index. So you have a limit. So for example, you can ingest 10K APS events per second, or you can index X amount of gigabytes per day. But when you generate the traffic, for example, when you index your network, your flows, and you add the flow generated by the log management into the flow that you index, you break your license because it's a loop. I made this mistake. So I agree, I made the mistake. So you explode the license and the storage. So again, a tip, use a management network to handle your log management traffic and not the production network. Another one, layer 4. I also faced this. I'm a big fan of Docker. So I try to deploy all my application in Docker containers. And the issue that I had, when you start you install a new application using Docker, you create your Docker compose, you have everything in place. Automatically, Docker will create a new network for you. 172.16. Blah, 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 I don't remember anyway. The problem that I faced, I had a VPN connection used to collect my logs and send them to my server. And when I deployed, so every time you deploy a new Docker, it will just increase the 1 byte of the subnet, and Docker created a subnet, which was the subnet of my VPN. I did not see this immediately. So when I had to investigate an incident, I just looked on my system. I don't receive any logs from this server for 1 month. Why? Because all the packets were routed internally on my Docker server because the local interface had more priority than the VPN interface, so I missed a lot of events. So keep an eye on your routing and so on, because you especially know, because we have dynamic routing, we have dynamic configuration of automation of tools installation, and you can face also routing issue and you lose events. In fact, just one remark, when you deploy some solutions like, again, a Splunk forwarder, for example, it will queue if the agent cannot communicate with the server, it will keep all the data in a queue because network outage may always occur. And when the connectivity is back, it will dequeue everything and you will get your events. Except that I don't know what's the maximum retention for a Splunk forwarder, but in my case, the routing issue was way longer. So basically I missed a lot of events. The wrong index. Classic. Also, when you configure a new source of events, in many, many different platforms, Splunk, ELK, you have indexes, and you send your firewall logs to this index, your system logs to this index, application logs to this index, and so on. But you have also the main or the default index. And if you forget, I also did the mistake. I made a lot of mistakes, trust me. I forgot to specify the index. But when you have a daily, a monthly, weekly report, and you say, I would like to generate the statistic for my firewall, statistic for my IDS, and you say in the query, search on this index, but you send 50% of your events in the wrong index, your report will be bad because you are missing a lot of index. So basically, what I'm doing now, the default index in the log management solution should never receive any event. And you had a control by yourself. If you received event, then you create an alert and see, oh, there are chances that some events are not properly routed to the correct index, and you can investigate and quickly fix the problem. Default config. Classic issue also. Especially this one. I like security vendors. When I was working with a customer, this customer was using ArcSight. It was 10 years ago. And they bought the PCI compliance package. Oh, it's nice. So it means that you just buy, it costs a lot of money, but you add extra rules, extra reports in your SIEM, in your log management configuration. And by default, you will get PCI compliance reports. It's nice. Yeah, it works. Except that what ArcSight forgot to mention is that you need to apply, where is my pointer? You need to apply tags to the assets. So you need to review all the assets in your database and say, this one is PCI compliant, is part of the PCI programs. This one, this one, this one, this one, and not this one. If you apply the rules by default, you will just have an empty report because by default you don't have any PCI hosts in your database, in your CMDB. Next one, misconfiguration. Just imagine you have a cluster of appliances working in failover, so not active, so active-passive, not active-active, and everything is fine, so you get the logs. I think it was an F5 cluster, and you get logs, everything is fine. And suddenly you have, again, to investigate an incident, you say, I don't see any logs for a while. So you start to investigate, yeah? And then you see in the logs of the F5 that the cluster switched to the other node, but the other node was misconfigured. No log management. Oh, it's bad. It happens also. So misconfiguration. So when you deploy cluster, stuff like this, be sure to test and be sure to send the events to the right destination. Search loops. This one was very, very, very bad. So from time to time, I have to create alerts because I'm just expecting an event to occur. And on one of my systems, I created an alert. When I see this term, it was a domain name, just drop me an email and generate an alert for me. And this is the configuration. It's not very readable, but I will explain you. This is the screenshot of my configuration, Splunk. And in fact, the alert name is mail from blah blah blah.be, a domain. And I would like to be notified when I see a mail sent to or from this domain. So I created my alert, perfect, blah blah blah. And what I did, I put in the subject of the alert Splunk alert name, and the name of my alert is mail from domain.be. Guess what? I was flooded because in my mail server, I'm also logging the subject from to subject. So it means that the alert saw a lot. The first time the alert triggered, it saw the domain, but it also saw Splunk reacted, sent a mail using the same mail server. In the subject, there was the domain name, and it started. Of course, this kind of stuff happened Sunday at 2 a.m. So when you are having the Monday at the office, flooded by email. It was a very nice one. Next, gaps in logs. I was looking for a nice screenshot, and I didn't find a screenshot related to log management, so it's a screenshot that I grabbed on Google Image, but it really gives you a good overview of the problem. So when you have network outages, or when a system is down, a system reboots, and the agent is not automatically restarted, it means that you have gaps in your events. And of course, trust me, when you will have to investigate an incident, the incident will be on this timestamp. That you know Murphy's Law. It's always like this. So gaps are very important. So the goal is to create an alert when a gap is detected. If you don't see any events coming from this device for this amount of time, trigger an alert. This amount of time can be 5 minutes if it's a really critical system, can be 1 week, 1 day, whatever, but create alerts to be notified that, oh, I did not see any events coming from this system for a while. It could be interesting to investigate. Upgrades. So as I said, your sysadmin, your beloved sysadmin deploy new tools, but they also have to upgrade. I hope they upgrade. But they upgrade tools, appliances, they upload new firmwares and so on. And from time to time, the API changed. And you use this API to collect logs, and suddenly it does not work anymore. So it means that you have a gap because you don't see any event. It's the worst case. I prefer to have a gap so the appliance does not work anymore instead of having bad events, not properly formatted, processed, and so on. But the API is not working, so what you have to do, RTFM, check the new API version, what are the new keywords, the new search that you can perform, and so on, and so on, and so on. So you use your time, basically. This one is nice. Reused event IDs. I did not detect this myself. It was provided by a friend. So I will not disclose which vendor. I will not disclose which kind of event. But basically, you know that some firewall they have, so they work at layer 7, they integrate an IDS. And this vendor, so they generate event IDs. So event ID 10 is, for example, blocked RDP session. Event 20 is, root login attempt. I don't know, stuff like this. But I don't know why, probably to optimize and to clean up the event database, they decided at a certain point to reuse previous event IDs to new events. So if you have in your alert and your alerting system, you have some alerts based on an event ID and suddenly they decide to change it, what may happen? It may be a big crisis inside your SOC. I see plenty of RDP attempts and so on, but it's not the same event, it's another one. It happens. Yeah. Lack of SIEM. So SIEM means Common Information Model. And is also classic. People usually, when they deploy a SIEM solution, a log management solution, they like to add more content to add some enrichment system. So, for example, Splunk, you can deploy a lot of Splunk apps. They have an app store, like Apple, Google, and so you can download apps. And those apps, they handle specific events, they enrich stuff, they can create new reports. It's beautiful, it works most of the time. Except that some developers, they don't respect the Common Information Model. You have 3 types of information. SRC IP, source, SRC IP without underscore IP. In many apps, the developer may decide to use source IP with an underscore, source IP without an underscore. But if you have this in your database, and you have reports or alerts, and you see, if I see SRC underscore IP equals blah, 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 send me an alert immediately. If the IP is generated on an event, but it's SRC IP without the underscore, you will miss it. Stupid, but it happens also a lot of time. That's why Splunk is pushing to have the Common Information Model. Where is my pointer? Come on. I lost my pointer. Oh, anyway. So Common Information Model, it means that when a developer would like to publish his application on the Splunk App Store, it must respect the Common Information Model. Otherwise, the application will be rejected. SOC fatigue. It's not a failure, but it depends. It's a consequence of all the different issues that we saw. Too much false positive generate a fatigue, and then finally people will reduce we have reduced capacities to react. Trust me, if you have people that are paid to do false positive, false positive, false positive, false positive, false, oops, it was a real one. It's missed. Because that's the human brain. You cannot ask people to watch logs and to validate false positive all the time. So, based on all the consequences that we saw a few minutes ago, you can reach some SOC fatigue, which is also a failure. We have enough? So, I think that it was a nice example. Now, I would like to give you some rules to avoid this, because the goal is to be constructive. So, when you make mistakes, try to implement stuff to reduce the mistakes. And most of the time, you will discover them when you have to investigate. I don't spend my day on my log management solution. I use my system when I need to. So when I need to investigate something, otherwise I even don't connect on the solution. So implement rules to perform self-monitoring. The goal of this kind of solution is to generate alerts. So generate alerts to monitor if the alerts are working properly. So simply. Example, you can detect gaps quite easily. Another rule, implement test scenarios to validate the use cases. In many times, organization, they use playbooks, they have use case. Yeah, if we see this and this and this and this, we fire an alert. Developers, the people responsible for the solution, they do some tests, it works. Does it work again 1 month later, 2 months later? For example, the classic example when you integrate MISP, another nice product with your log management solution. The classic first alert that people do is, if I see a domain name, so a communication to a domain name which is part of my list of malicious domain name from MISP, I generate an alert. Okay, that's nice. But how do you test it? It's very easy. You just create a fake domain that only your organization knows, and you try to resolve from a workstation once a month this domain name. And if this domain name appears in your logs, the use case works. Otherwise, you have to investigate why. It's an easy check and so simply to implement. Playbooks, you have to reserve also some time to review them. So when you deploy, that's the same issue. When you have a playbook in place, the playbook should have somewhere a step. It's like a development lifecycle. Review it, implement new check, verify if it's still up to date. A good tip, you can use Sigma to do that. So when you have to implement new use case and so on, use Sigma. My recommendation is you have Sigma, you put all your rules into a GitLab instance. So it means that you have the historization, you can work, multiple people may work on the same Sigma rules, and you can create interesting scenarios, and everything is logged. You see who changed what, when, and so on and so on. Regarding MISP, sometimes I have ideas poof like this, and I remember another incident that I faced using MISP. My MISP instance, so basically what I'm doing, once a day at night, I just export the malicious domain from my MISP instance. I store this in a CSV file, and the CSV file is indexed by my log management solution. Guess what? So I'm doing this using a curl, blah, 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 curl output redirected to a CSV file. And one day my MISP was down. I don't remember why, but MISP was down. So at 2 a.m., my cron job started. It tried to connect to the MISP instance. It did not work. But what did curl? It write nothing to my CSV file, and my CSV file was indexed. So it means that for a few hours, or if you execute the script once a month, once a week, the CSV file was empty. So it means I missed the detection of all the malicious domain for this amount of time. Stupid again, but it happened. Regarding use case, I like to explain use case as reverse engineering. It's a good tip. When you have to implement use cases, the goal is to ask yourself, when do I need to be alerted? For example, when I have an admin login on the domain controller, a suspicious RDP from a specific country, a specific site, and so on. And when you have this information, the goal is to make some reverse engineering to define where are the interesting events for me. So based on this, you will be able to collect at the right place all the log mandatory to generate your rules and to be sure that you will fulfill the use case. That was the last slide. So I hope that you learn a lot. Maybe some people say, I already faced this. Indeed, I faced this situation in my company. I'm open for questions. I don't know how many time I have. Perfect. Questions? Come on.
It was very interesting talk. Thank you. And I have one of the point number 4 that you have. So today is not equal to tomorrow.
Yeah.
So ideally, you want to store and keep the logs forever, and the original, the raw format of the logs, right?
If you can.
But you face 3 problems. So I really want to hear your take on that.
Yeah.
So the first one is the capacities for the storage.
Mm-hmm.
Second one, the performance.
Yeah.
And the third one. Exactly. So, I forgot. So that's fine. But let's take the first 2 first, right? So the performance and the storage. What do you take on that?
I think it's, even if the storage is quite cheap today, what you can do to increase your storage, you can work on different type of media. So, for example, you work on SSD for the live events, so the event for the last 15 days, one last month, and so on. Then you switch to a normal hard drive and so on. Also, what some companies do, they just archive the data, they export the data in a specific file format. They just generate an archive and they store it on CD, DVD, whatever, and so on, and it's stored somewhere on a safe place. So it means that if you have to investigate an incident which occurred 2 years ago, may happen, we never know, you have a DVD, okay, 2017, you load again the DVD, and that's the way to work. Because I think that if you have to investigate an incident which occurred 2 years ago, it could be urgent, but you have time to restore the archive, to process them, to load them again in the system, maybe deploy another system in parallel to the one. For example, I have my Splunk instance. Okay, again, no marketing, but I'm using Splunk. I have my official Splunk instance, and when I have to investigate some incident, I just spawn a Splunk container. I load all the data inside this Splunk container. And when the incident is closed, I just destroy the container, all evidence are gone and so on, and I don't pollute my official Splunk with new indexes. I broke the performance down, stuff like this. Just, if you install the Splunk container, you get a full license for 30 days. It's enough to investigate, so you can index a huge amount of data. So do this, and you don't pollute your system, and you have an instance dedicated only for this case. And you also avoid some data leak between, because if you index in the wrong index, you will maybe have data for multiple customers in the bad index and stuff like this. So deploy multiple platforms. I think that's the easy way.
So if you have the very big logs, for example, Windows logs, it's a real nightmare. So if you want to store them in a raw format, the performance will be a big problem. Splunk, for example, if you have to pass a Windows log, it's a huge problem. And now I remember the third point, which is a license. So if you want to keep the original format of the logs, sometimes you have to pay a lot for the license.
I would say it depends on your business, because in some business you must keep what we call the raw event. For real evidences, if you go to the court and so on, you need the raw events, untouched and so on. In this case, I will say, if you need it for compliance reasons, it means that you have a budget and you have to foresee a budget for this compliance reason. Case closed for me. But for investigations, I don't need the raw event. And you are facing the very first slide, so opportunistic or use case approach. Because, if you say I'm working with use case, for example, Windows events, everybody knows that if you log all the Windows events, you will be flooded by a lot of junk material. But if you have use cases, you know exactly which event log, and you will only focus on those ones. So, again, if you have compliance needs and you need to keep everything, it means that you need to budget and you go to your manager and ask for more money. There is no magic.
Thanks for the nice presentation. It goes around the same area that you have been discussing, but a little bit into the active side, not archiving of logs. There are a lot of very well received baselines around now in the open source community. For example, the SIEM configuration from Swift Security and
right.
the audit bit configuration from the UK National Cybersecurity Center. They have one as well that's open source. And both of them are super great for configuring those kind of logs. The problem is even those optimized and really well written configuration generate a lot of logs. The moment your environment it starts exceeding, like for example 10 workstations, and you start like hovering to like the hundreds of machines, and you end up like generating, as you said in one of the slides, 30 gigs of logs per day or even 200 logs per day. We tried the UK National Cybersecurity Center audit bit configuration on like a cloud fleet, and the architect came running like, the 2 servers that we are using for the login are dead because of the traffic that they were hit by. So it's a lot of optimization. So my question is, how do you find the sweet spot between the amount of logs you are actively collecting and the amount of log that guarantees that if something wrong happens, you will have at least enough information to find out what went wrong and how to counter it and protect yourself or the company?
Just one word: retention. Apply different retention policies. So if the events that you parse because you need to parse them because you know it's your use case, based on use cases, you define a retention of 1 year, 2 years, for example, because the events are only the useful events for this use case. If you need to do some thread hunting, and so the opportunistic mode, as I explained, apply a retention of 6 weeks, 2 months, 1 month, I don't know. And so it means that if you are facing an incident, okay, you have a limited amount of time, you have to be quick to react and to search in your logs, but you don't break your license, you don't break your server, your storage costs, and so on. So retention is, and you can also apply retention by type of devices. Headquarters, retention 1 year. Branch offices, 6 months. VPN logs for remote users, 3 months. You really define by yourself how you manage your logs. That's the magic of the tool. I like this. You really, you create the index as you want, you create the retention policies, and you can really fine tune and be sure. The goal is to have enough time and to be sure to find the right information at the right time.
Sounds fun. Thanks.
Just a question. At the beginning, you mentioned about all the different use cases and different ways to design use cases. From your perspective, how do you evaluate the effectiveness of these use cases? I mean, there's a kind of business requirement or compliance requirement. Yeah. You try to align your use cases, but how do you make sure that with the use cases in place, you satisfy all the requirements that have been put in there by the business, for instance?
First, so as I mentioned, you have to, from a technical point of view, you have to test your use case. So you are looking for specific domains. Once a month, you generate a query on a unique domain that only you know. So you are sure that the use case is working. No, I would say that the use case, you can have use case coming from the management, compliance reason, or for example, the CISO may ask, okay, provide me once a month the list of dormant, what we call the dormant accounts. So account who did not logged for X amount of time. So it's coming from the management. So they have it's a normal process. They have a request, you implement, it works, and you provide the result. It's up to you to update you if the requirements are changing in time. The other use case depends, the technical use case I think depends on the threat landscape. So you will implement use cases based on what's in the news. For example, the magic RDP vulnerability, the sudo vulnerability a few weeks ago, 1-2 weeks ago, something like that. There was a Sigma rules developed for this sudo exploit, I think 2 days after the exploit was released. So, I mean, the goal is also to know your infrastructure. If you know that you have Unix servers, you use sudo and this and this and this, and you have a vulnerability, so implement the use case. And in this case, it's up to you to decide when it's not needed anymore. Based on this, I like one of the new feature of the latest MISP. Then we have to stop, sorry, but we can continue the discussion offline. The new MISP feature, the decaying of IOCs. It's exactly this. So you have an IOC which has a value at the time, and based on the time, the value will decrease until the IOC, according to your business, looks less interesting. Does it answer your question? Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
The floor.